So in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about the 14-step process of acquiring your first $1 million business. And if you're someone who wants to start out with the process of acquisitions, and if you want to create wealth through buying businesses, then watch this video till the end, because I'm going to be revealing the steps. And this is going to be an overview if you ever wondered what the process is like from the beginning to the first acquisition, which is buying a multi-million-dollar business through banks' money. And I'm going to be talking about that, so stay tuned. So the first step is actually your image. And believe it or not, some of you might be like, what are you talking about? We understand this, but the first thing is the image. So you have to go get yourself a nice 3-piece suit with a tie. You're not building a tech company where you can get away like Mark Zuckerberg does with a t-shirt and a jeans. This is an extremely sophisticated financial profession, and you're going to be building an investment company, an investment vehicle, and you have to dress the part, you have to look the part, and it's very important. And as stupid as it sounds, people do judge you from your look, and you are entering into a niche which is deep into the corporate world, and people do look at you and judge you. So you cannot enter into a t-shirt and jeans, eating an ice cream cone, entering a multi-million-dollar business and trying to make an offer. That just is not going to fly well. Same thing with the banks. You cannot be going in a t-shirt and jeans. They're not just going to take you seriously, because you will see that they would be dressed up in a 3-piece suit with a tie, and some of them will wear pocket square. They look all very professional. So it's much better that you look like them and you have the right image for them. So first step is buying a suit. Do not show your face or yourself until you are in a 3-piece suit with a tie. And more importantly, there is a different side of you that will come out, and you will notice it. It will start to change your identity. And I wasn't used to wearing suits, but when I got one, I started to wear it, and it felt kind of weird, to be honest. But as I stepped outside in the business world, people respected me, people took me seriously, and people actually considered that I was giving a legitimate presentation. And I did not have a casual attitude about my way of being. So buying a suit is not just a simple step or some stupid step. It's an essential step to showcase the right image when you go out into the business world. Step number 2 is picking a region and an industry and a niche within that industry. So when you talk about buying a multi-million-dollar business, it's very rare that you would just buy one business. You might want to buy several businesses, and you want to pick an industry where you can do that. So you should not get into an industry which is already where there is only a few players. For example, the social media space only have a few players. So that would be a classic example of what not to do, what industry not to go into. So you want to choose an industry where there are many small businesses available for you to buy. An example would be obviously healthcare, where there are a lot of private practices which are owned by families, and they are doing multi-million dollars in sales. And you could start talking to them, reach out to them and buy the business. And you also want to leave some room for rejection. So what if a person doesn't want you to sell their business? You should be able to go to the next person, and you should have thousands and thousands of options available. You cannot choose an industry which has a total of 20 companies in your region. You want at least a couple of thousand businesses available, so that you could buy a handful of them and exit, sell them at a higher price. So volume is important, and the second metrics is the margin. So you want to make sure that the profit margin is above 20%. Why? Because you would be using banks' money to pay for these businesses. So you want to make sure that the company can actually pay off the debt. And we are not in the business of buying loss-making companies. We are in the business to buy profitable companies that are doing very well. We are not buying companies that are not doing well and try to turn it around. We are looking for profitable companies owned by legitimate people, and they are doing well, and they are getting old, and they want to sell out to someone who can take their business forward. And that's the type of candidate that we are looking for. So you want to make sure that there are many of these businesses available, and it's an industry which at least has 20% profit margins. The third factor to choose an industry is also macroeconomic stability, which means that if something like COVID happens, or pandemic, or recession, you want to make sure that the industry survives. One of the classic examples of industry that gets disrupted is restaurants and airplanes. Why? Because they operate on such a thin margin that slight change in the macroeconomics, the business gets wiped out, and you cannot make payroll, and the business doesn't sustain itself. But healthcare businesses tend to still be stabilized. They also can get wiped out. Certain types of businesses, especially if they operate on a thin margin, it can happen. But largely speaking, healthcare tend to be very resilient and strong even in down times. So you want to make sure that if you are raising money from banks, that the business is solid and has a solid profile. So you want to choose an industry which has a lot of these businesses available, because it's a numbers game at the end of the day. And then you've got the region. You want to make sure there is enough banks and enough businesses. Again, it's not just the industry, but the region has to have enough businesses and enough banks, because ultimately you would be raising money from the banks to buy these businesses, and you want to make sure that there is enough banks for you to raise capital, and the banks should be raising money to acquire companies. And to do that, you got to do some market research to validate this, which brings me to step number 3 is market research and validation. So once you pick an industry, you got to validate it. You got to look at the data. You got to look at number of companies in your area, and you got to compile a list and see if there are any acquisitions happening in your region, and validate whether that region is good or not. And and you gather the market data, and you will put them in a presentation format, a business plan, and you would set up a criteria of how many companies you want to buy, and you will create a company vision. And so that's going to be the document that you would be creating. That's step number 3. Step number 4 is that when you talk about buying a business, it's a very complex endeavor. So it has legal technicalities involved, financial technicalities, accounting technicalities, mergers and acquisitions technicalities, corporate finance, these types of matters that tend to be very technical, and you want people who have gone through formal training through universities and have had very successful careers in these fields in very big companies. And there are several companies that tend to be the topmost in law, topmost in accounting and finance, and topmost in operations. And you could find experienced executives who are now retired to be your business partners in this. And you can give them some shares, and they would be your advisors to help you navigate through this complex business venture. And you need these advisors from all of these fields. So that's the process of building the team. You find them, you meet them, you do a presentation with them, and you close them as your business partners. And then you need an external law firm and an accounting firm. Why? Because the law firm will do the paperwork. And why you need, and also the investigation on the business, because you could be talking to someone who's running a business, who's making money, and they don't have the right licenses, they're not in compliance with the law, and they've got a whole bunch of problems legally. So this is why a law firm can look into those things and tell you whether that company is in legal compliance or not, whether there are any red flags or not, or whether there can be any fines in future or not. Because they might have broken the law, but they may not have, nobody would have found out about it, but they're still out of compliance, and in future liabilities can come. So you want to be able to detect that early and factor it into your agreement whenever you negotiate an agreement with a business. Then the accounting firm is also responsible to look into their books and seeing whether the numbers are legitimate or not, whether the profit is inflated, deflated, are the tax being paid. A lot of the people don't want to pay tax and they are doing funky activities in their business, and that can create tax liabilities and tax fines that may come later on for you to pay once you've acquired the business. So you want to make sure that the numbers are as represented and the business is complying with tax laws and corporate laws. And healthcare is a regulated industry, so you want to make sure that they are complying with the regulations. So that's why you need an accounting firm and a law firm to perform due diligence, and the law firm to do your transactions paperwork. And then, which brings me to step number 6, which is interviewing banks. So how are you going to buy the business? Well, somebody has got to give you the money, and typically you could go to an investor to buy the business, or you could go to a bank. Now, when an investor puts down the money, they will take over more shares in the business, and you will not be left with much. But when you borrow money, then all you have to pay is the principal and the interest back, and you can keep the ownership of the company that you buy. So this is the reason why we use debt and why we go to the banks. And banks tend to lend money if you want to buy a company that is older. Bank is not going to give you money for starting a startup or developing a technology, or or something like that, which is not producing revenue, producing cash. The banking business is chasing cash flow. They want to lend money to businesses that can make them money through interest. So they are looking for cash flows. So there's no point going to a bank wanting to acquire a loss-making business that you really believe that you can turn around. The bank is not going to give you money for that. The bank is going to give you money for a profitable business that has been stable. And the bank, you want to think of it in a manner that the bank would, if the owner of the business you want to buy goes to the bank for loan, he would get it based on the financials. So if it's a business like that who can themselves go and get financing, well, that's the same thing. You are asking for a loan that will be financed with this business, which would have gotten the loan if the owner went. And you have this experienced team who would be taking over, so why wouldn't they give you the loan if the business is properly valued? So that's the step, is that you got to reach out to banks and you got to interview them and you got to understand what their lending criteria is. And different banks have different policies. They're structured in a different manner. They keep changing their policies. They keep changing the industries that they lend in, and you got to understand which industries they lend, which industries they don't lend, and what are the financial metrics that they use to evaluate a business, whether it's a good opportunity or not. And you're also establishing contact so that later on, when you do find a business, you know whom to talk to, and you know if that bank can give you the money or not. And then, so once that step is over, which brings me to step number 7, I believe. Forgive me if I go a little bit off on the step number. So step number 7, you will go and you will find a business that you can buy, right? So you would start you'll compile a list of all the companies, you will start cold calling them, and you would find the decision maker of the business. You will set up a meeting, and you would ask if they're interested, for what reasons they're interested, and you would look at their financials and evaluate the business and see if this is a business you can buy or not. So once you reach out to a business, you start gathering information about that business, and you start compiling that information, financial information, legal information, licenses, all kinds of things, and they supply all of that to you, assuming you've signed some NDAs. Some people will just give the information without an NDA because they really want to sell you the business. They don't care about confidentiality as much. It's just assumed. So you look at you gather the information and you present it to the board. And then step number 8 is presentation, risk analysis, and offer creation. So you don't really come up with an offer because you haven't evaluated the risk of that business. It may not be worth it to give an offer. You may find out that it's too risky for you to get into, and you may just remove the opportunity. I've had several opportunities that I brought and I thought it would be feasible, but my board did not give a positive feedback. They said, this is not a good opportunity, you should not move forward with it. So I removed the opportunity and I moved on to the next business. So all of this happens when you start investigating into the business and start finding out more and more things with your board members. And you want to get their view because you want a financial, accounting, legal, and operational perspective, 30 plus years. So once you complete the team, you would have around 200 plus years of experience, and they will all be looking at the deal like hawks, and like looking at it deeply and removing all the things and talking negative. When I attended some of these meetings, I was like, fuck, everybody's so negative, nobody has positive to say. But the truth of the matter is, if you take care of all the negatives, all you will have left is the positive. So you want to talk about the negative scenario, what can go wrong, and how you can make sure that you have mechanisms in place to protect yourself from any disruption, any risk. Because ultimately you are talking about raising capital from the bank, and you want to make sure that you have protected yourself from the risk, and you use their expertise to do that. So you would be analyzing the deal with your board members, and then you would be crafting an offer, and then assuming there is no red flag, then step number 8 would be to present the offer to the seller and seeing what their response is, and getting into an MOU. MOU is just a memorandum of understanding. It's a story of the deal, or a preliminary structure of the deal that you agree upon on writing. Why do you get into MOU? Why? Because, well, a lot of the times you're sitting in a fine dine restaurant, you're having a conversation with the seller, and things are a little bit romantic. Both of you want to do the deal, and you say something, they say something, you hugging each other, and deal has been formulated. And then next morning, when the effect of the wine has gone out and the fine dine restaurant is no longer there, well, you may find that they understood something else, and you said something, and they understood something, and they said something, and you understood something, and they may change their mind, or they may forget what the deal was. So because of that, you want to write things down in a piece of paper. This document is not a binding document, so they typically sign on this document, because it doesn't mean that you're going through with the transaction. It just means that this is an understanding, and this is a serious discussion, and you've signed some papers that represent the deal. But it's still not a closed transaction. It's an understanding of the deal. It's a proof that you're in conversation with each other, and this is what the deal looks like. So once you have the MOU, step number 9 would be actually to go to the banks and present the deal, and present the financials and get their view. Okay, so once you present the deal, they will ask you, have you done the risk analysis? Have you done due diligence? What are the risks in the business? Who's the key man in the business? How are you going to retain the key man? Do you have proper terms established so that you make sure that there are no disruptions? We're going to be presenting this with the credit committee. You want to make sure everything is right. Do you have audited financial statements? Do you have tax returns? Can you give us the license of the business? Is it in compliance? How old is it? And all kinds of questions, and you got to answer them. You got to be prepared. You got to have your board members on the call with you, or a meeting if it's an in-person meeting, and you want to make sure that the information is organized, because if you don't organize the information properly, well, they're not going to understand the business case. Believe it or not, a lot of the bankers can get confused because you just gave them the information in such a disorganized manner that they don't actually understand the deal, and they present it with the credit committee in the wrong manner, and then they come back and say we can't do the deal. Okay, so you want to make sure it's organized, it's legitimate, it's easy to understand, and it has the major points in the body of the email, etc. And you present the case, you address the questions, and you keep talking to bankers. So once there is a bank or several banks interested, they will give you what is known as a term sheet. So term sheet is a document that is an indication of their interest, and they are willing to participate, and they have given you an offer. An offer is an offer, okay? It's just an offer, and they are telling you what they can do with the transaction. And typically it's approved from the credit committee, or sometimes the banker himself has the authority, and they give you the term sheet showing their interest, meaning they want you to take them a little more seriously. So once you have the term sheet and the MOU, that's a decent sign where you can do a board meeting. And typically, acquisitions, one of my business partners told me, who has about 30 years of experience doing this, that acquisition is a 1 in 10 closing. Based on his experience and his data, 1 out of 10 acquisitions closes. So you should have at least 5 to 10 of these deals with the banks, with the term sheet lined up before you actually move to close, because some of them, seller may change their mind, banker may change their mind, or you may find something in due diligence and things may not work out. Sometimes family members come and they block the deal. There is a lot that can happen in a deal. There can be some disruptions at the board level also. I'm not going to get into that right now, but there are things that can happen. There are too many moving parts. There is the board, there is the seller, there is the bank, there is the credit committee, there is the seller's family, involved, and it's all very emotional, and it's their baby, and they're selling it. They value it a little more than you would value it because they've spent 25 years in it, but they're also desperate, and there's too many things going on. And with the banks also, they can play some games sometimes. They give you one offer, then they change their mind, and so it's as one of my other partners, healthcare expert, he says, Prithvi, it's a dance. It's like doing tango, a little bit forward, a little bit back, a little bit on the side, and so it's a dance, and you're in a dance of these things, and you're going crazy in the middle of this. And then step number 9 is you do the board meeting, you present the case, you form the company, you formalize everything, and then you finally engage the law firm and accounting firm to do the due diligence, to find some red flags. And then they look into the business, they see everything is okay. If not, then you're not going to go through with the transaction, or you will renegotiate. If things are wrong, doesn't mean the deal is off the table. It just means that you would bring the purchase price down and you would restructure the deal. So the deal can fall through at this point also. But you want to make sure that if everything goes well, then you present the case again with the bank, this time for approval of the loan. The loan gets approved, you get into transaction documents, everybody comes together, and then you sign the documents, the loan, the money gets transferred, and the ownership gets transferred, licenses to your name, etc. All of that process is carried through with your law firm, accounting firm, and your board. You got to look into it, and you got to see how that process will happen, structure it, plan it, and execute it. And there you go, you have the transaction, and you got to make sure the owner is involved in the business, helps you with everything, and all of those things the board is going to help you. So this is just an overview of the process. There are many intricate details that this video will become too long for that, and it's not a scope of this video for me to go into complete intricate details, but I wanted to give you a detailed overview, not for you to take action necessarily, but to understand what the whole process of deal making looks like. And if you feel compelled by it, if you want to get involved in doing multi-million dollar deals as a business owner, not as an employee of some private equity company, but your own company, and you being the owner of the business, a majority shareholder, and carrying on this process and having a lead role in this whole process. Reach out to me. I offer a one-on-one mentorship to serious entrepreneurs, and I don't work with everybody. I work with selected people that I know are going to perform, are going to deliver, and I work with them and I mentor them over 3 to 6 to 12 months. It's a little bit of a flexible structure, but I make sure I put you in a position. I help you with crafting your business idea, building the team, getting you in contact with the banks, how that process works with the sellers. And if you want to learn all of this, want to learn from me one-on-one, reach out to me on my email or any of my social media profile, and it's going to be me replying to the message. So and I'll be sending you a form, and you would fill that form, and based on that I will assess if it's a right fit or not. If it is a right fit, then we would do a free consultation call. A one call is going to be free, and then we will assess further whether this is a fit or not for the both of us, and then we will either move forward or we will not move forward. So that's the whole process of getting in touch with me and signing up for the mentorship program. Again, it's one-on-one. It takes a lot of effort and time on my part, so I want to make sure it's a right fit. And if you're interested, if you're serious, if you want to learn how to create wealth by acquiring multi-million dollar businesses, it's not easy. It's not risk-free. There are risks involved, as you can see, but it's worth it if you want to choose this as a career option to grow. So if that's you, reach out to me and we'll talk soon.